Charles Leclerc's pole position lap in Budapest didn't just surprise McLaren. It triggered something deeper inside Ferrari. As the final cue 3 times lit up the timing screens, it wasn't Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris at the top, but Leclerc pulling a lap out of nowhere on a track he once described as cursed. For the cameras, it was a feel-good turnaround. But inside the other side of the Ferrari garage, there was no celebration. Lewis Hamilton had already packed up, eliminated in Q2, finishing 12th at a circuit where he's won 8 times. And what's haunting about that result isn't just the elimination. It's the quiet, weary radio tone that followed every time. Every time. No technical complaint, no data request, just resignation. It was the bookend to a weekend that started with emotional discomfort in FP1 and ended with competitive irrelevance in qualifying. A soft-spoken signal that something far more fundamental is going wrong. That radio silence echoed an earlier moment from FP1 when Hamilton, after a single exploratory lap, told engineer Riccardo Adami that the car didn't give him good feelings. The words were plain, but the implications weren't. Hamilton doesn't speak in absolutes unless something's deeply off. He didn't ask for adjustments. He didn't mention balance or grip. He just didn't trust it. And Adami's response, just one word, okay, was equally revealing. No follow-up, no recalibration, just dead air. That silence, for a driver like Hamilton, is deafening. It doesn't just reflect a technical disconnect. It signals emotional misalignment. And by the time Q2 came around, that unspoken tension had calcified into a full-blown performance wall. While Leclerc found precision in the chaos, Hamilton couldn't find flow. In a sport where confidence is currency, he'd gone bankrupt. Leclerc's last lap heroics showed what happens when the car speaks the same language as the driver. The SF-25 might not be perfect, but in the hands of a driver whose rhythm it understands, it becomes more than the sum of its specs. For Hamilton, the same machine felt alien, responsive to someone else's inputs, tuned to someone else's style. And that difference doesn't show up in the sector times. It shows up in the pauses, in the clipped radio, in the hesitations through high-speed direction changes that don't show up on camera, but scream in the data. Hamilton wasn't fighting the track. He was fighting the car itself. And with every lap that failed to deliver feedback he could believe in, that fight became more internal, more personal. So when qualifying ended and Leclerc stood at the top of the grid, it wasn't just a statement about raw pace. It was a referendum on trust between driver and machine, driver and engineer, and maybe even driver and team. And as the lights go out on Sunday, that silent fracture might matter more than the grid position. Because for Hamilton, the real battle isn't with the field. It's with a car that no longer feels like his. As the paddock came to life on Saturday morning, McLaren looked untouchable. Practice times had established their authority, and the opening qualifying sessions only reinforced it. Piastri and Norris traded purple sectors with a kind of rhythmic certainty. Even the early threat of rain didn't rattle them. Their car looked dialed in for this circuit. Fast changes of direction, tight mechanical grip, and enough downforce to float through Sector 2 like it was pre-mapped. But while McLaren surged, the Ferrari garage split in two. Leclerc, calm and focused, went quietly to work. Hamilton, on the other hand, unraveled. His radio message, every time, wasn't just a complaint. It was a verdict. And when he followed it with a bitter remark about whether the team needed a different driver, the air in the garage shifted. This wasn't the sound of someone lacking speed. It was the voice of a driver who no longer felt part of the machine. And while the cameras will focus on Sunday's grid and the race ahead, the real story is playing out in the silences. Trust doesn't collapse overnight in Formula One. It unravels gradually. Through ignored feedback, through setup compromises, through weekends like this where one side of the garage celebrates and the other side quietly packs up before park firm, even finishes. And as the team looks toward Monza, the stakes couldn't be higher. Because that weekend won't just be a homecoming. It will be a test of Ferrari's ability to manage pressure, yes, but more importantly, of its willingness to evolve without fragmenting. To build not just around Leclerc's speed, but around a true dual-driver identity that can carry them into the 2026 era with cohesion instead of conflict. For Hamilton, the road from here is uncertain, but not hopeless. He's faced this before, at McLaren, at Mercedes. Each time, he responded not with panic, but precision. He doesn't need the car to be perfect. He just needs it to be his. And if Ferrari is willing to recalibrate, to listen not just to the numbers, but to the nuances, then Budapest may yet be remembered as a turning point. Not the moment Hamilton lost trust, but the moment Ferrari realized they had to earn it again. Until then, the questions remain. Can this high-profile pairing rediscover the chemistry it never quite found? Will Ferrari choose alignment over acceleration? And in the fight for the 2025 championship, is the car's biggest weakness still in its mechanics, or in its mirror? One weekend won't decide it, but it will echo. And if you listen closely to the gaps between the sectors, the clipped radio replies, and the silence that follows, you'll hear the future of Ferrari taking shape, not in pole positions, but in decisions. And some of the most important ones won't be made on the track. They'll be made in the moments after.